Hello, and welcome back to the GODSEND Podcast. My name is Raymond Chi. I'm your host, and on today's episode, I have the pleasure of bringing on Matthew Kang, AKA Mattatouille. As some of you may know, he is the editor of Eater LA and a host of their YouTube series Koreatown. Welcome, Matt.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. So, before we begin, I guess we'll just touch on, could you just kind of take us back, I guess, from the beginning, just like kind of how you grew up, your childhood, I guess. Could you start there, please?
Yeah, sure. I was born in Orange County. My parents came to the U.S. Different times. They both lived in Brazil prior to coming to the U.S. They didn't meet there. But they met here, and I guess their families kind of arranged a marriage and were like, hey, and they were like, dude, this is so not modern,
Of course.
we don't get set up anymore.
Wow, I didn't even know that.
So I grew up in Orange County, and my parents are interesting. They have my dad has a very Forrest Gump sort of story. He was all over, and he's a sort of a big character. But I was born in '84, and then moved to Glendale rather. By the time I was 6, so I had a brief moment in Cerritos. And the only thing I can really take away from that time was that Orange County was at the time very white, very, not like what it is today. There's a lot more Asians now. So growing up in Glendale was fine, just easy, very comfortable, suburban. My dad was a businessman. My mom basically was a homemaker, and everything was great until probably I was 12 when things started going in a crazy direction. Just family-wise, my parents started changing their career and going into ministry. They were involved in church. My grandfather was sort of a legendary church man. He was an elder of Young Knock Presbyterian Church, and he basically was one of the founding elders. Started so if you go drive by Young Knock Presbyterian, you see his legacy. It just north of Chinatown. It's this monument to the Korean American Church in Los Angeles, and and so it's kind of crazy having that legacy of a grandfather who's just a wonderful man of God. Growing up in the church was always a part of me. But I think for my parents, they sort of had this time of wondering, after they left Young Knock. When I was a child, they sort of did a bunch of things with parachurches. It was the 90s, right? So all the Koreans were into the parachurch, Pentecostal movement, a lot of stuff like that. And then my parents ended up going to Fuller Seminary, which was, I think, a really great decision, because I think when you are a Korean immigrant, you have this sort of mission, is that you come here and you be successful 6 days a week, and then on the 7th day you go to church, and then you kill yourself. There's no sense of rest. There's no sense of family. My family wasn't quite in that formula. My dad was very Americanized, so I grew up playing baseball.
Little League.
Yeah, and my dad speaks perfect English. This it's very disorienting. Because he's very American, even though he's fully Korean. And that gave me a different. I feel like I'm sort of a third generation Korean in that sense. My Korean is not perfect, so I definitely had some issues with identity. Okay, how Korean am I? I'm clearly not white, but I grew up in Glendale, which is a very diverse city. It's not particularly. It wasn't the K-Town crowd that these are the kids that I saw on Sundays. Yeah, and Glendale back then was, was pretty suburban, very diverse, a lot of different people groups. So I like that, I think that I grew up in a very eclectic, mixed upbringing. Church to me was always was about community, was about hanging out with people, was
fellowship,
having guys that I could look up to, because I didn't have an older brother.
Of course.
My sister and I were, we just kind of grew up around church people all the time. And so I think everything was more or less good for me. I don't think I ended up with any truly traumatic or bad experiences, you know.
Yeah.
Up until even college, and even with college, I was like, okay, well, where's the easiest place for me, you know? And I wanted to go, of course, like any Korean, you want to go to like the best possible school, Ivy Leagues or whatever, and I was like, okay, well, I got into USC among other schools, you know. And most of my friends were going to USC from high school, so I was like, that sounds great, you know. They have a really good business program. My dad was like, you should study business. I was like, okay. I had no idea, you know, like, you know, people ask you, you know, when you're a teenager, when you're young, what do you want to do?
Of course.
You have no idea, you know. Even when you're in college, you have no idea. It's stupid. The whole system that we are in, that we are set up in, no, it's just not really ideal for, I think in life, you should be as open as possible to whatever comes up and then just do what you truly love. Hopefully that thing is wholesome and wonderful and upbuilding and is useful, right? Nothing wrong with playing video games all day long, and I like playing video games, but that, it's sort of, you know, there's not a lot of ends there, you know, that you can use to help other people. So yeah, once I graduated college, I went to do a very predictable career. You know, went to work at a bank, private bank, suit and tie every day. You know, long commute.
Good money though.
It was definitely more money than It's not a lot thinking about it today.
Oh yeah, of course.
As a single man,
yeah, in that time, yeah,
you know, as a single
time.
man, you're living on your own. You know, you
bachelor.
have very low expenses. My favorite thing to do was to go out to nice restaurants. You know, like
for
I was like, I could finally afford eating out. You know,
I see.
Because going to USC was a great experience. Being in Los Angeles, like even though I grew up in LA, you don't really understand how big and vast LA is.
Not at all, because we're in these bubbles essentially. Because California is or LA is so big,
right? And like, you know, people always ask me like, where'd you grow up? Like, I grew up in Glendale. Like, you know, I didn't really
specifically, yeah,
like I didn't know that much
LA,
about
right?
Santa Monica or Venice or Malibu, Melrose. I didn't know it. I mean, it's as foreign to me as anybody in the Midwest, right?
Of course. That's what's crazy though, yeah.
It is. So I think being a USC student with a car was really helpful because I could wander on my own. And my dad did this very smart / dumb thing where he gave me a gas card and he's like, hey, you know, if you need to fill up your tank, blah, blah, blah. So I was like, yo,
let's go.
That's dangerous, you know? So I was always that guy that I was like, yeah, I'll give you a ride, no problem. You know, people love me. And the thing is, like, back then, you know, I had this reputation where I knew directions really well. So my nickname was MatQuest. You know, this is like back in the day.
This is the first time I'm hearing this. That's awesome, man.
You didn't know this because you were too young, you know. But like your sister and stuff like that.
I'm sure she knows, man. Oh,
you know, it was always like, oh, I gotta get home. Oh yeah, Matt can take me home.
Matt
you know? I don't even need to give him directions. You just be like, oh, it's over there in Porter Ranch. No problem, I'll take you. Man, and I had this old, you know, I drove around this old green Jeep Cherokee, 5-speed manual. You know, that thing. Sorry, my cacao is going off.
Problem.
Like it just being in college, I learned like what it meant to be. You know, an Angelino, like be a resident of LA, to understand LA's culture, its people, you know, what made it wonderful. And to me, it was always Korean food. You know, going to USC, you're 10 minutes from K-Town.
Oh yeah. That's
when I had my first real K-Town experiences. Not so much the nightlife part, you know, that was later.
That's what everyone's thinking. Yo, we're talking about food.
Yeah, I'm just talking about the restaurants. I'm not talking about the bar scene. Will come
Everyone
up later.
Immediately thought of beer, alcohol, booze.
Hey, you know, and that's gonna come up. You know, that happens
for sure.
Like, you know, I think for me, experiencing great Korean food. You know, I didn't really have a lot of great Korean food at home, namely because, like I said, my dad cooked American food, you know, like he made steak and like they made a lot of Brazilian food, Brazilian barbecue. It was amazing.
Let's not complain, but yeah.
But like, and my mom, like, I love my mom. She's not like a cook first kind of a mom, you know?
I know what you mean.
Yeah. Oh, is your mom like that too?
Kind of, because she's notorious to ask people for recipes. Like, how do you do this? Or how do you
my
do
mom
this?
doesn't. I mean, she'll learn something from my dad. you know, like
No
how to
way.
make kalbijim.
I see. So
you
your
know.
dad really was like a chef. Like,
Well, he was really good at cooking.
is that kind of where you drew your kind of like
for
passion
sure?
for food
I mean,
from, I think?
my dad loved food. My mom and dad love food.
Oh, of course, yeah.
But like, it's different in the typical Korean way. I think because my dad grew up in the U.S. and also Brazil, and my mom, Brazilian food is amazing, super different than Korean food. So, you know, things like pasta and Italian food, which are a big part of Brazilian food. I had all the time growing up. So it was a very different experience. I didn't eat a lot of traditional food,
Of course.
Korean food, except for when I went to visit my grandma.
So it's like a different appreciation for food in
Right.
that aspect, right?
Exactly. And so you sort of come up with Korean food. You're familiar with it, but then when you go to Koreatown, you get to choose what you want to eat.
Yeah.
Because you know when you go to restaurants with your parents, they order for you.
You already know.
Yeah,
okay.
you're like, oh, you just end up with whatever the
Why do you
scraps.
give me the menu? Here you go, right back to you.
You know, and then when you go on your own, you know, it's like, oh wow, like I gotta choose. You know,
brand new
like what is this jjigae? Like what is this chorim? You know, it's a whole rebirth, and so I think. I took that passion for Korean food. I really ate at a lot of Korean restaurants. Korean food's pretty affordable. As a college student, you know, you can't go out to all these fancy restaurants.
Of course.
So back to like, you know, when I was working at the bank, every day, I was at the time living in Eagle Rock, and I, instead of driving home, that's a long drive from Beverly Hills to Eagle Rock. It's killer.
Wow.
It's an hour and a half.
Rush hour. Come on, we're not even.
It's awful, you know. And this is before like podcasts and YouTube and whatever wonderful forms of entertainment that are available in our cars.
We're talking only radios or CD displays,
oh yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah, I you know, my burned CDs and crap, like skipping and everything. It was horrible. So yeah, I mean, my daily endeavor was trying to figure out, what do I eat tonight? Which cool restaurant do I go to? And I also met a lot of people in this same community, you know, of like, oh, there's like food, you know, before FOODIE was a thing.
Yeah, man.
And I hate that term, but
sorry,
it's a thing.
Yeah, it is, man.
And it's the
Sorry,
thing.
man.
The only reason why I don't like it is
Yeah,
because
please tell us why.
it's not like everyone says they're. Like, I hate when somebody goes, "Oh, you're right about food. I'm a foodie." I'm like, really? Like, show me your badge. You know, like, show me how much you truly love food.
Yo, watch out, man. Someone's gonna flash a FOODIE badge at
Yo,
you one
I don't.
day, man.
You
I
know,
swear.
if you told me right now I'm a foodie, I wouldn't believe you. I'd be like, dude, I got bigger, you know, whatever this. Now, if it was a couple years ago, I would have believed you.
Thank you. Yes,
You know,
yeah, for
but
sure, yeah.
What I'm trying to say is that I think it became a hobby. You know, it was this thing where I was truly passionate about. I spent most of my day, if I wasn't actually working, reading up on it, pursuing, you know, whatever I could, whatever experiences I could from a culinary perspective. I was all about it.
So it was more than the clout chasing, essentially, at that time.
Well,
right?
yeah, because it wasn't cool.
Yeah,
like,
it wasn't
I mean,
cool. It wasn't in at that time. Right?
My coworkers, I would talk to them. I would be like, hey, you know, there's this cool new restaurant, Beverly Hills, it just opened. I just read about it on LA Times food section. They'll be like, yo, I'm just gonna get Chipotle today again. I'm like, it's the fourth day you've gotten Chipotle this week. How many times can you have that crappy barbacoa thing? It's not even really barbacoa, you know. And so I thought it was really funny that, you know, thinking of even 11 years ago, 12 years ago, how restaurants and dining was very niche, you know. And now I think restaurants and dining and chefs are very much a part of your cultural capital. You know, your badge, it's something you wear, something you show. Oh, I've been there, you know, I know about that food. I've had that kind of food before. I know that chef,
stripes,
blah, blah,
yeah.
blah.
Mm-hmm.
It's what gives you a bit of like cultural credibility in the same way I think music was maybe 15, 20 years ago. You know, you'd be like, oh, I saw that band. I know that indie, whatever. Like, I was there. I heard them before. I saw them live.
Been
like,
there, done that.
And that's still important, but like, I think food has gotten close to that level of cultural relevance,
definitely.
you know?
Definitely.
Where you get like Chrissy Teigen, like people are like, what is she famous for? I mean, she was a supermodel, but like,
now what is she famous for?
She's famous now because she's a food personality.
Exactly. Didn't she come out with like a cookbook and stuff
she has,
too,
she
right?
has 2 cookbooks. And,
there you go.
You know, she got into this big Twitter spat with Allison Roman, a cookbook writer.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Like
I did not hear about that part.
It was a big controversy a couple of months ago.
Uh-huh.
It seems so distant now, but like there was this cookbook author and recipe writer named Alison Roman, and she writes for the New York Times. And she basically like called out Chrissy Teigen and also Marie Kondo, for like selling out, And I was like, dude, you're a white woman. Like, how dare you call out these, two Asian women?
Exactly, essentially.
But it was this big controversy, and the big takeaway was like, look, don't ever criticize Chrissy Teigen and Marie Kondo. They're extremely beloved,
Exactly,
and
fan base.
You're never gonna win that on Twitter, like they are the Twitter mafia. And I think Marie Kondo, by the way, probably didn't care. She was like,
she probably didn't even understand the tweet, man.
Like, I'm gonna just go back to fixing this mess, So I think I love the food world, I love the food culture. I love being in it. Now that I'm in it, and I've skipped a lot of years, but I feel like I'm not working. I just sort of do what I would normally do, even if I was doing some more menial job. I would still be as interested and as passionate about the food world.
But it's not just a job to you. Because I remember I heard you say multiple times, like, this is like when you're talking to a camera and you're eating, right? Essentially, right? Come on, man. It's the dream, man.
I mean, K-Town, the show came about because it's very interesting. And not many people know this backstory.
Please, if you.
What happened a couple of years ago was that I started working at Eater full time, but they still allowed me to, pitch to other publications or whatnot.
I
so
see.
What had happened was I had this idea. I was like, you know what, like Korean barbecue is a big deal.
Oh yeah, especially during that
it's
time.
like a subculture.
Yeah.
Right. Especially all you can eat. Like it was a game, amongst. Don't tell me how many times you went. Like it was like a thing. You go with your buddies.
You already know about
all you can eat.
Disgusting amount. Yes.
Yeah, and it was a challenge. Like how can I bankrupt this place? Right? It was like, how do I make them suffer? How do I make them fear me?
Oh, this is the real talk right here.
Right? And so I think I wanted to document that. I wanted to talk about how Korean barbecue is as interesting of a food subculture as burgers and pizza and hot dogs or whatever people, American people care about. And I pitched a story to Lucky Peach, and Lucky Peach basically turned me down. So I was like, okay. I wrote a story about it. It did really, really well on Eater. But one of the producers, the video producers at Eater was like, hey, what do you think about doing like a small, like 4-part series just explaining Korean barbecue?
Like the basics we're talking about.
Yeah, and this is like pre, other YouTube people talking about Korean barbecue. I'm sure it existed in Korea. I'm sure there were YouTube videos about it. But we're talking 4 years ago.
Yeah.
To actually go down and have, 2 big cameras, doing beautiful shots of Korean barbecue and then
the right
asking
way.
a Korean person, not like a white person or like a non-Korean person to explain it.
Yeah.
It was a big deal.
Yeah.
It was a big deal for Eater and for YouTube for someone to go and represent our food and to talk about basically contextualize it and to make it so that it was such a palpable, wonderful experience. And so I did 4 episodes, and it was my first time ever producing video, and I had no idea what the hell I was doing. But I will say that the series was extremely successful.
Yeah.
And the most successful one that I did from that first season was a video I did about basically saying that Korean barbecue is better in the U.S. than it is in Korea.
Yep, I remember that video.
And like even to this day, I mean, I'm getting
millions of views or something.
I'm getting criticism from people in Korea, like you have no idea what you're talking about, like you're so wrong. And I mean,
wow.
I had like there was this guy, I think his name is Zen Kimchi or something like that. He's this white tour guide dude, personality and based in Seoul, and he called me out on YouTube. He like made a video and was saying how wrong it was.
Response video, huh?
Right, and this is like years later. I was like, well, I forgot about it.
Come on now, seriously.
So we ended up having this chat, and I was like, look, how well do you know LA's Korean barbecue?
Yeah.
And a lot of them would be like, I live in Korea, and I was like, well, I mean, you can't really talk. And I admittedly, I hadn't experienced a lot of Korean barbecue in Korea. So I had in the past, like briefly and at some places, and it was fine. But it wasn't at least 10 years ago even, or 15 years ago, it wasn't as big of a deal.
Of course, that difference wasn't. Yeah, of course.
Right. I think Korean barbecue in Korea is like a pretty new phenomenon in terms of how far they're taking it.
Yeah.
You know, and I finally realized how far it had come when I did my final season of K-Town. I did it in Korea. We did it in Seoul. And I went to Born and Bred, which is one of the most famous. You know, they take it to.
They're the goats.
Korean barbecue to this logical extreme, you know. And like the thing is, people don't know, but that video shoot was an absolute train wreck.
Really?
Oh yeah, like if you watch the video, it seems more or less fine, but like actually, I'm dying. It's a horrible experience. Not the food. The food is fantastic.
Yeah, of course. But what was the?
Let me tell you the story. So we go there. Now I've shot 62 episodes of my show all over the country. I'm like, dude, this is it. I'm here. I'm at arguably the world's best Korean barbecue place. They specialize in Hanu, which is, you know, a Korean
Wagyu, right?
Produced. Well, no, I mean, I wouldn't even say it that way. I would just say it's Korean beef. You know,
Hanu just Hanu. Yeah.
Hanu means Korean beef.
Yeah, Korean beef.
But it is, if familiar to somebody, it would be Wagyu style.
Yeah,
right?
There we go.
But it's much different than Wagyu. It's much more intensely flavored. It's delicious. It's fatty, but it has the beef flavor to match, which is different than Wagyu. Like Wagyu is just fat. You know, it's fat on fat. You know, and I actually say this because I actually had Wagyu this morning. Like,
wow, excuse us, man. Wow.
It's not every day I have Wagyu for breakfast. Today I had Wagyu for breakfast.
Oh man, that foodie life. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'll give you some before we leave.
Oh, too funny. But yeah, please.
I'm serious. I'm gonna give you some. But so anyways, so we go to the shoot and we show up, and this guy, he rolls up in a Range Rover Sport in Seoul, you know.
Okay.
The owner, he's wearing a Gucci sweater.
Okay.
I'm like, you're the owner of this place? He's like, yeah. What are you guys doing here? I'm like, we're here for to do a video shoot. We came from the United States. He was like, my publicist told me that you know, it's just gonna be a photo shoot, you know, 30 minutes tops. Yo, we got like 4 camera people. We got me. We have a handler. We are
like a whole crew, basically. Yeah.
It's a whole crew. Like I'm like, it's gonna be 3 or 4 hours minimum.
Yeah, literally.
He's furious. He's like, no, like I'm opening my restaurant tonight, which is like, okay, sorry, we came on the night that your restaurant's opening. He didn't know that.
Yeah.
And he was extremely irritated. We were irritated. I wanted to leave. I was like, screw this. I'm out of here. You know?
Excuse me. Basically, he was a dick.
He was a dick. He was a total dick.
Sorry. Yeah.
And like, I'm probably now banned from that restaurant forever if he hears this podcast.
Blacklisted Mattatouille.
Now I will say, once he accepted his fate that we were going to be there and record this video, like, it was an amazing experience. I mean,
want to fix your mic just like adjust it towards you.
Sorry.
Yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Like, he definitely had some of the best meat I've ever had in my life. Hanu is absolutely delicious. He prepares everything like right in front of you, almost like an omakase chef. You know?
Wow.
And he's every little cut. Too. Yeah, it's like perfectly curated. I mean, it's absolutely delicious. He dry ages the Hanu, which intensifies the flavor even more, you know, than like fresh. It's really, really incredible. And I was like, wow, I feel like I reached the pinnacle of my career. And I was like, I'm just going to go out like Jordan, like on top, you know, like
mic drop, Mamba out,
you know, like that sort of thing. So I haven't recorded any videos since, you know, but I will say that the legacy that it created, not that I ever thought about that, but, you know, being a Korean food writer, talking about Korean food in America, you know, not just in Korea, was an incredible honor and a wonderful thing that, you know, I look fondly on. And I'm glad that it made a lasting impact for a lot of Korean communities. You know, I still get people in Dallas and Atlanta and Philly, people going like, oh, you know, like Chris Cho, who's a chef in Philadelphia. He's like trying to be like, he's like TikTok famous. He has like over 1 million followers. You got to follow this guy.
Is he a scholar? The scholar guy?
No. That's Chris O.
Oh, that's Chris O.
Yeah.
Sorry.
But this guy, I mean, he is like.
Oh, check him out.
Yeah. Oh, he's amazing, and he makes these videos. It's very like hip hoppy and great cuts. But I did a video of his place, and like I hit him up recently. He did a video for Eater on TikTok, and it's just really great to be part of the network of
and that community.
Yeah, Korean food people in America, and I think Korean food has definitely arrived. It's definitely a big deal. People love it.
Thanks to pioneers and trailblazers like yourself.
I don't know if I'm a trailblazer. I think I'm more just a documenter. I think people like Roy Choi and Beverly Kim in Chicago, David Chang. Those guys are the ones that are actually cooking the food. I just talk about it and eat.
Still essential, man. It's a team.
Yeah,
effort.
I have the laziest. It's so much easier. I'm like, like a sportscaster. The guy, like Mark Jackson or whatever. All those guys. They get to criticize and talk about the sports players all the time. They don't have to do it anymore. They're either retired. Charles Barkley is all like, the Lakers are done. I'm like, he's over the hill, right? He's gone. But he doesn't care anymore, and that's basically me. I'm basically Charles Barkley.
Awesome, man. You're at the top of the pyramid, like in psychology that we learn, like self-conceptualization at the peak.
And I think it's definitely it's great, and it was great up until the beginning of this pandemic. Of course, things got really, really bad, and it's been really sad to see a lot of long-time Korean restaurants closing.
Recently you wrote on the Beverly Sundubu, right?
Yes, Beverly Sundubu closing after 34 years.
Crazy,
that was one of my favorite restaurants.
Yeah, they had the green peas in the pop, right?
Yeah.
I love that. Like, I know it's like a little thing, but people are gonna be like, "What the?" Right? No, but like those are the little things I always looked forward to. Like nowhere else. Like
my favorite thing about
Nurungji, like come on.
Yeah,
man.
my favorite thing about that restaurant was like you're sitting on these wooden trunks. And they got the tables are tree trunk
so rustic,
cut out. Yeah,
super
super rustic. I'm like, I don't even know the amount of germs that get stuck in that thing. But the food was incredible. It felt super homey. And
agreed.
And the owner's daughter, JJ, she emailed me first and she was like, "Hey, I just want to let you know we're closing. I want you to be able to tell that story." And
awesome.
It's cool, but at the same time it's also really sad. So it's a tough time. I really hope that Korean restaurants do come back.
For sure. Then I guess like at this time, then like what are your plans or your hopes or goals, I guess, coming like, of course this year is concluding, but then like, looking forward, I guess, are there any like plans right now or like anything like in the books or that like you want to pursue or anything like that?
I mean, I'm at a point in my career where I'm constantly evaluating, how much longer am I going to be able to do this?
Wow.
And I'm hoping I could do it forever. I mean, eating and writing and talking about food doesn't require that much physically.
Jonathan Goldman, I mean R.I.P. But come on, if he could, come on.
Well, no, but he went hard and he didn't take care of his body, and clearly, I don't plan on doing that. I've been really.
I would stop you before you ever got
and I
remotely close to as big as I was.
I have this rule where like I don't buy that much clothes. Like if I stop fitting in my clothes, then that's how I know. I'm like, oh.
Hey, all you people who want to lose weight, no take or like control your weight.
It's hard.
That is a good way to do it though.
And like
it is hard.
I've been cycling a lot during the pandemic. I started picking up road cycling. I'm not one of those spandex guys.
Awesome, man.
I just like showing off my sexy legs, really, and getting them really tanned.
And let's be real, y'all were thinking the same thing, man, when you signed up for cycling. All you cyclists out there.
No, I used to think when I was driving, I was like, those guys are idiots.
Tools, right? Or something.
And now that's me. I'm like, oh,
come full circle, bro.
I hate it. But so that's been really, really great.
Awesome.
I've been losing a lot of weight doing that.
Awesome.
But more importantly, just being healthy.
Of course.
Like
health
athletic.
is wealth.
And but plan-wise, I mean, my wife and I Rochelle and I wanted to have as much travel as possible before we had kids.
Of course.
My favorite activity. So now that I'm in my mid-30s, most of my friends all have kids. They're stuck. And, you don't even know the pleasure of giving all your friends FOMO. Oh, it's the best. It's the best. And
this is what I needed to hear about.
No. Okay, I'll tell you something right now, okay? Now, first of all, you need to get married. It's a good thing. Traveling with your wife is absolutely the greatest thing in the world. I've traveled so much. I've had the pleasure and I've been able to travel. But once Rochelle and I got married, we took off almost a month for our honeymoon. Like we went to Thailand.
Oh,
and we went all over.
Yo,
you know?
went.
Yeah, we were in Phuket. We went to Bangkok, Chiang Mai.
You guys just like an Asian tour, basically, huh?
No, we just Thailand tour.
Thailand tour all throughout.
And it was incredible to be able to travel together, explore a country. I did the my favorite day was when almost every day we rented a motorbike. So I was like,
that is so sick, man.
Yeah, which I heard is psychotic. Like people in Thailand are like, how are you alive? You know, like it's so scary. And I'm like, I'm fine. You know?
Still here.
But I remember Rochelle had never been on a like a 2-wheeler.
Oh my gosh.
She was like, she was so scared.
But
we went on a 5-hour ride through the jungle. You know, just like riding. You know, you're all.
Yo, never forget that.
You know how you fill up your tank, dude?
How?
They have on the side of the road in Thailand. They got these used whiskey bottles.
Don't lie, bro.
No, I'm not kidding. And then they're in these. They're
like
in
some
these,
like Jameson, like just straight up bottle.
Yeah. Well, it looks like, and they're all clear, and they're like on the side of the road, and you got to pull over. You got to open up your thing, and then that's how they hold the gasoline, and they're like 50 cents or something. I forget.
Yeah, that sounds like a movie, man.
It was amazing, and so it's like, oh, you know, like traveling with your wife is so much better. So recently, you know, now it's been almost a year, but last November, we went to Europe for 2 weeks and went to Spain and Paris and Dublin, Portugal. It was like, and people literally were looking at our social media and going like, who are you guys? You know, like, and it's not like we spent that much money. We did. It wasn't like cheap.
Well, I mean, you guys planned it all.
Of course, we planned it all. We did it right.
Cheap. Yeah, you got to spend no matter what.
But I was like, all my married friends with kids, they were just like, can't do anything. You know, we can go to Disneyland.
Oh man, jealous to the max.
So that's been a bummer. But this year we're already planning. Before the end of the year, we want to take an epic U.S. road trip because we're like we can't go outside of the country.
Okay, then might as well then. Yeah.
So our plan right now is to go visit my sister-in-law Jenna. Her boyfriend lives in Arkansas.
Ooh.
So
how far is that? Sorry, like I'm trying to like.
I think it's 24 hours of driving.
So it's like a full day, like no matter. So are you guys just gonna pull out all nighter?
No.
Or are you guys gonna stop? Oh, that's dangerous, right? Yeah.
We'll probably stop in like Albuquerque.
Oh, okay, yeah,
and
nice
then
place
sleep
to
there,
there, and then just
check out the Breaking Bad house. I don't know what we're gonna do in the ABQ. and then drive through. You drive through Oklahoma, and then you get to northern Arkansas.
Dude, that's gonna be awesome, man.
And do that, and then maybe go to New Orleans.
Ooh.
Which I haven't been to New Orleans since pre-Katrina. Like I went. Yo,
that's like what, back in 2008?
No, it was 04. Yeah, or 05 or something. Yeah, so 15 years ago I went with my dad.
Jeez.
So we're thinking either New Orleans or like Memphis or something like that.
For sure.
But just like do the Great American Road Trip, you know, that kind of a thing.
Yeah, definitely, man.
And travel because I think we're gonna start trying to have kids next year.
Praying for that.
So, Lord willing, or Lord, depending on His plan, And this is an interesting thing. Like my old pastor Adam, he came over. He lives in Seattle now, but he came to visit us a couple of weeks ago.
Adam Johnson. Sorry,
Adam Johnson. Yeah,
I love that guy, man.
He's great. Everybody loves that guy.
Come on, man.
So he came over to our house and we were talking, and then we sort of we're talking about having kids, and he has like a 1-year-old.
Yep.
And then he just gave us this weird talk, It was an interesting talk to get as a married couple. Like, he also married us, right?
Oh, yeah. So yeah, close, like yeah.
And I've known him for like,
of course,
well,
you guys are real good.
But he was like, just so you know, just know that it's on God's time, And people like to, when they try to start having kids, as a couple, you try to like make it about what you can control. And like how you can conceive and all this stuff. Not that I've ever tried, but like it. And then he was like, just leave it up to God.
That's not the point, right? Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And that's
the point is to
and I was like,
control,
he's even making facts about like, about like trusting in God. Like that's amazing.
Oh my God.
That's a really cool pastor move. And it was also kind of in the end I was like, that's really it's even worse. It's even worse than like when your parents are like,
oh, of course.
Oh, so when are you gonna have kids? I'm like thinking, that every time they ask us like, so when are you gonna do it?
No matter what, that's the first thing.
It's really funny and
that's hilarious.
And so it's usually for both parties, like for both your parents and yourself, like whenever you start talking about like when are you gonna have kids, the conversation, like it cuts off real quick, because I think everyone comes to a realization. It's like everyone knows how that happens, so you don't have to really encourage it,
Not at all.
Like it's just this hilarious subject. And now that Rochelle and I have been married for 3.5 years,
Yeah.
there's certainly my parents are like, yo, you guys gotta get on it, like you're just having way too much fun. And I'm like, I tell my parents
They want to be grandparents ASAP.
Oh yeah,
right?
and
Even
they
though,
already are.
Michelle,
My
but
sister
but
had
yeah,
a baby, and
but still from you, yeah.
I know, and they want a Kang. So so then my thinking is like, but you don't understand how much fun we're having. Traveling and doing our own thing and making all my friends jealous. Going to Vegas like every 2 months, it seems like. Stuff like that. And so now I think the Lord is going like, no, it's time to have kids. And I never thought about children as like something where God will teach you something.
Oh, I see what you mean.
But I remember I had this conversation with my current pastor of my church, Elliot, because I was kind of talking to him about like, I feel like the world is kind of a terrible place right now. Like you think about the political situation, the pandemic, the economy, the climate. I mean, we can't breathe the air. Why do we want to bring children into this world?
Wow, I never thought of it like that.
Oh, I think about
Jeez.
it daily, like literally, because
Scary.
I think to myself, I'm like, my children, my children's children are going to be way worse off than me. Like, they will not live
Preach
a better
it,
life
man.
than me.
Preach it,
No,
man.
because like my
Yep.
parent, our parents come to this country to have a better life and for their children.
Of course.
Which, hey, thanks, mom
Thank
and dad.
you. Exactly.
Y'all hooked it up. I had a pretty good existence. But like, I'm thinking,
Your kids.
my children are screwed. They're gonna be wearing face masks till the end of time.
Homeschooled.
Yeah, they're gonna Zoom teach. Be taught on Zoom.
Oh my gosh, what a nightmare.
They'll never have the same experience as I did. And I remember Elliot was like, that didn't you just have no faith that God is good? He's in control, and that God is the one that you don't have kids so that, I guess it made, to me, I was always thinking about kids like, okay, something you just deal with and you just do.
Yeah.
But in a way, when you have children, it's like you saying like, God, I trust that you are really in control, of not just our family and this life, but like,
Amen.
of society and our, this world that we live in, that even if it seems like climate change is going to destroy this planet and Donald Trump is going to destroy America and, whatever,
Oh man.
and all these protests and whatnot,
Yeah, man.
like ultimately it's a declaration of like, okay, Lord, we trust you, and I think even Korean immigrant parents don't think about that. It's not like we just think, oh, put our kids in church and they'll be fine. Like it's the church's responsibility to create
Go do
responsible
Awana and-
Christians. Yeah, exactly. But in fact, it's ultimately up to God. And
Amen.
and if we trust Him, and if we obey Him, then our children will be fine. And so I think that's sort of been weighing on me, and I'm like, all right, I feel like the Lord it's just too many people telling me the same thing now. I do, and of course, like Rochelle really wants to have kids. I do want to have kids.
Yeah.
I just happen to really like my lifestyle too.
Thank you for being honest and admitting that.
Because, and I think most dads especially will tell you, like, look, they love their kids, but like, dude,
Let's be honest. Yeah.
it's tough. It's hard.
No.
And it's a job you will never be able to quit, ever. And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of where I am right now, with my family life and just with my career
For
and
sure.
everything. And I think in a year from now, I'll probably will be ready. We'll have a kid on the way.
For sure.
So I'm just gonna be thinking about all the things I must do, all the experiences and travel and restaurants and everything I must do before I literally become shut in. And I'm just gonna be. I don't even know. I have to accept my fate.
you have to turn the page. You can't keep reading the same page, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Wow,
I'll
man. Definitely. No, you will, man. Okay, for sure. I mean, geez. I mean, that last part just about, like, just the impact everything has had and just, like, where you're at right now. I guess the only thing I guess left to say or ask you is, like, if there's anything else you'd like to leave with our audience, just, like, speaking from your position and just, like, where you stand in society and whatnot, just, like, speaking to, I guess, not just the youth, but anyone who may be kind of, like, struggling, how do you say it? Struggling to release control, right? Struggling to accept that God is in control because of, what the news is saying, what his social media is saying, and with all these, like, like you said, protests, movements, and whatnot. So yeah, is there like a kind of like could you guys kind of give us like a final message, I guess, to the people, I guess, a word of encouragement or just something that, that you
I
feel
think,
in your heart that you want to share?
I think one of the things that I'm constantly asked about is, like, how did you become you? How did you become this food writer person? And, like, it's not like I ever aspired to it,
That's what's crazy.
Yeah, I know, and it happened. I think it's God's blessing that I was able to use something I was truly passionate about. And I think if I was to tell a young person, young people have so much anxiety about what they're gonna do, and you too. You're like, well, what am I gonna do? Like, whatever,
Oh,
and
man.
I think it's funny because I haven't thought about that for a long time. I haven't had anxiety about what I'm going to do. I just am. You wake up and I think for me, pursuing food and pursuing restaurants became about telling great stories. I think I didn't think about that at first, but now I realize that I'm a storyteller.
Definitely.
And there's something wonderful about being a storyteller, because you are thinking about people, you're thinking about the narrative, you're thinking about how's God related to that story, And I believe that there's some sort of parallel career or parallel job or purpose that's in everything in life. Let's just say you're a nurse, like my wife Rochelle is a nurse. She goes to work and she has to do very difficult things, take care of people who are on the verge of death. She has to clean bodies.
She's on the front lines.
Yeah, she's on the front lines. And it's extremely difficult and backbreaking and demoralizing. But I always tell her, I'm like, you are an agent of healing, and so you are a nurse, and you have to wipe butts, and you have to do nasty things sometimes.
Yeah. Shout out to nurses, man.
Oh, dude, I don't even want to know.
Oh my gosh.
But then I have to constantly remind her, I'm like, you're a healer, and that's what I pray for her. Like, when my parents are praying for her,
Awesome.
and it's like an incredible encouragement, because ultimately, like, hopefully that's what you walk away with. Whatever your career is, if you're a podcaster, then you are a chronicler. You are a person who gets people to evaluate, like, what's really meaningful and purposeful in life, and what's going to bring glory to God or whatever. And I think every surface career or job or whatever endeavor has a deeper meaning, and I think if you find out what that is and that makes you passionate, like, you won't worry about what's coming next. You're not going to be like, oh, like, how am I going to afford this, or how am I going to pay for that? I believe that those things come, and yeah, that's probably my big takeaway.
Wow.
And and ultimately, like, make whatever you do about people, and just if you make connections. I'm a people person, I love relationships and developing them and building them, and for what they are, not for what they can give me. I don't care about that. Like, if I can connect and do something great in somebody's life, then that's enough for me. That's very mystifying to Rochelle because she's a little more introverted and she's always like, why are you talking to them again? And I'm like, I like it. You know, I like connecting and making, you know, meeting people.
Personality,
and, you know, and
Who you
so I think, yeah, I don't know. I don't know how that happened, where I got to do and be what I am today. I'm constantly thankful. You know, I think this is it's a really certain point in our time right now. It reminds me a lot of 10 years ago, or 11 years ago with the last
crisis,
economic recession. And back then I was much more of a mess than I am today. You know, like I kind of skipped over it, but you know, I had a rough patch there. I was engaged. I met a woman and ended up breaking up and traveled the world alone just to try to find healing or whatever. And it was this time of isolation. So I understand that now we're at a point where a lot of people are probably really worried, anxious. And we should be so blessed. You know, we have a source of a cure for the anxiety. You know, we have something we can be grounded on. You know, and I think that's what has been probably one of my ways of conveying the gospel to people, because people always ask me like, how are you so sure,
positive,
you know, or positive, whatever. Like, and it's not like when I talk to people, when I talk to my close friends, and I just go like, I believe it. We're gonna be okay. I believe that my life is in God's hand, you know, and I think that's a strong thing to convey to a non-believer or somebody who's struggling, you know. Sure. Yeah, I had this long road trip with one of my writers, Bill. We went up north doing an assignment, and we were stuck in the car and we were talking, and he's a long-time atheist, you know, very his family was extremely like uber religious, and he just was very burned by the whole notion of God in his life. And I think what that time, it was like the first time in a long time I felt like God was kind of going like this and just going like, hey, you know, just represent you know, the work that I've done in your life, and just show that. And it's very strange because this gentleman, he's a lot older than me. You know, he's seen a lot more in his life. He's been through more. He'd almost be my dad. He's definitely old. But for me to talk to him
in that manner,
yeah, and encouraging, I think he was probably really strange, because most of the experiences he's had with quote unquote religious people was very much about you're doomed, or, you know,
you're wrong, I'm right.
You're wrong. Yeah. It's, you know, and I think what I thought was really interesting about your podcast was that, you know, spirituality is so much deeper and richer than just like, don't do this, you shouldn't do this, this is bad, you know, because I think that's just so basic. Yeah. You know, I don't think that's how we think as people. I don't think those are the moral issues that are presented in front of us are always like, well, that's clearly wrong and that's clearly right. It's a lot murkier, you know, and I think as people, we're always quick to condemn, we're always quick to judge, and that's just like part of our nature.
Of course.
But like, I think as if we want to be agents and people who reflect who God is, then I think we should be real with our own struggles and not judge or condemn, but just share how the gospel has given us a sense of assurance and confidence, and has brought us this sort of sometimes difficult to define sense of purpose.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that that speaks to me in our American society very loudly, because everything in pop culture and everything around us is very dismissive. It's very pessimistic. Man. But I think if we can be like, no, we have this confidence, we have this otherworldly sort of faith, essentially, then I think that's very confusing to this world.
Of course.
So yeah, that was an interesting experience for me because, it's even with my spiritual condition in the last 6 months, we haven't been able to go to church. We haven't been able to fellowship.
Of course, nothing's normal.
It's been, it's definitely a situation where it's isolating.
Yeah.
But that opportunity sort of like woke me up again, going like, there's always chances to be who you are and be where God placed you, in those times. So, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of different things that I want to work on in the future, like one of the things that I've always dreamt of was of writing a book about the spirituality of food.
Kind of like literally soul food, like the soul of food.
Well, literally, yeah,
right?
because I do believe that the Bible in particular is, God created food and uses food to, I think, show us what He's like. Because I think, food is, when done well, when it's procured from great sources, is delicious. And there's something that's ineffable and wonderful about delicious. You just can't think about it. There's not even that many words in the English language. There's yummy, delicious, and tasty.
It's not even a word, but yes.
But I mean, and I think that, and that's why, like, so my favorite, sort of phrase in the Bible is always like taste and see, because I think, I think there is something amazing about tasting, and I love thinking about how when we experience God, we just taste, because tasting is so different than when we see something or hear something, which are all, I believe, sensory aspects of how God relates to us. Tasting is a weird one.
Yeah, man, that's a different.
They didn't do that in Sunday school. They'd be like, "Yo, dude, just taste this honey. Taste this sweet honey."
Teacher Matt. What?
No, I know it's like very sensual and weird, but I think that there's something palpable about how when we experience God, sometimes you just can't. It boils down to tasting. Did you taste Him, and His goodness? So, like, I've definitely thought about exploring that, and conveying and relating that, because I think, to me, food is always something that when you're passionate about it and you're into it and you like eating good food and you find good food, then it's this infectious thing. And I think that spirituality is similar.
Amen.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, metaphorically in that sense.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's something I've always looked into. I have no plans to go to seminary yet. My parents are like, "When are you gonna go get your MBA?" I'm like, "I'm not gonna get an MBA. Screw that." But yeah, definitely. As I get older, middle age, and start having children and family, like,
get more
that's
time
one of
to.
the impact things I would love to make.
Awesome.
And, more than K-Town. Like, hey, Korean food's good, but there's more than just that.
Of course, man.
Yeah,
Looking forward to that.
Yeah,
praying for that for sure. Then, I mean, that pretty much sums it up. I guess we have this fire round of questions that we do. Just answer as many random questions as possible. So if you don't mind, let's get into that. All right. Okay, first question. The worst food that you have ever tried or dish?
Oh. This is... I've had a lot of bad foods.
Then, like, I guess first one that comes to mind, I guess. Wow, that's a lot. If y'all are seeing this.
I mean, okay, well, I try not to have bad food.
Of course.
So when I have bad food experiences, I tend not to think about that. you know.
Sorry to bring this back up.
Yeah. I mean, it's okay. You know what? It's not even a bad food. I remember the first time I had stinky tofu,
Oh,
which is not inherently bad. It's actually really good.
Really?
The first time I had, it was funny. I was actually with Jason,
Jason Chow, right?
Jason Chow,
Uh-huh.
and we were in college at the time, and I think he was like on a date with somebody that I knew, not Hannah. I can't
Sorry,
remember
Hannah.
actually. I actually don't remember. I mean, I might be completely misremembering.
Okay,
But the point is that we had stinky tofu
Uh-huh.
together, and he's Taiwanese, and so he was like, "Oh, like
So
you gotta have
good."
stinky tofu." I was like, "All right." So I remember having a bite, and like, if you've never had stinky tofu, it's basically fermented tofu that is at first extremely pungent and
Oh.
just it is like another level of ratchet.
Like dank, like
dank. It's just so dank and so intense and it's so aromatic that
Oh.
these like it's almost like charcoal like burning through your sinuses
Oh.
of grossness, you know. And I remember the
Love
first
it.
bite, I literally wanted to gag and just throw up.
Wow, it was like that, huh?
Well, I mean that's what my mind was saying. Whereas my body was like, come on, this is food. Like
but
this
my
is,
body.
this is somebody's food, you know, and it was at a restaurant. And I took a bite. I was like, oh, that was awful. And then I took another bite, and it was this like stir fry of like vegetables, so it had other stuff in it.
Of course.
And I was like, that wasn't that bad that time around. I kept eating it, and I was like,
Started growing on you.
oh. I mean, even to the end,
Yeah.
I wasn't like that was amazing, you know. It was definitely bad, but it burned my consciousness in a different way, you know, kind of opened up, unlocked like new neurons that I didn't know were there.
New thoughts.
Yeah, I was just like, whoa, you know. It was sort of like I don't want to say, but it's sort of like a new drug, you know, and it just kind of it wakes you up.
Oh,
so
man.
I think stinky tofu is definitely one of the world's most interesting foods.
For sure.
I do eat it now. I have no problem with it.
But that first experience, though.
Yeah, that first time, oh, it was rough.
All right, then I guess to make you feel better, what is the best dish or one of your favorite dishes that you've ever tried? Because I know you've tried so many. I know you.
That's even a more difficult.
Yeah.
question.
So then, give me. How about this?
No, I'll make it easy for
Recently,
you.
yeah,
I'll make
okay,
it easy
yeah.
for you. I mean, I think to me, I'll just say my favorite thing to eat is always a great Korean soup.
Like a jjigae or like a kook.
Jjigae or kook is great. Yukgaejang is like definitely my all-time favorite, you know. And I've still have not had a version that I have deemed perfect.
Really?
You know,
so you still haven't found the one.
I haven't
the
found,
Yukgaejang.
and I don't know if there is, but it's sort of like I'm always gonna be searching for it because I think it's such a simple dish.
Of course.
But like, I would love like I don't know. I want to talk to David Chang about this. Make me the most perfect Yukgaejang ever. You know, he probably can't. I don't think he's capable of it, but like I think that's to me because it's this spicy Korean beefy dish. You know, it's extremely beefy,
So
but like
rich.
it has a complex spiciness, you know, spicy. Like it can be really hot or it can be kind of hot. It's sort of
So
chilly.
chilly.
It's layered, and then you got all the texture. Right? To
Oh.
me, I love the textures. You know,
Yeah, man.
the kozari and the all the the kind of crunchy, stringy things. Even the beef can be stringy.
Yep. The kyoran.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
So there's sort of I think to me, and then you sort of dip. I remember the first time when I was young, I ate this dish and I would just dump the whole rice in there. And some
Same,
like
same.
Ajumma got mad, like, what? You know, you can't put all the rice in there. And I was like, okay, fine, jeez, it doesn't matter.
Does not matter. Yes, but
you know, I learned that there's artfulness, you know, to enjoying every bite and putting a little bit of rice and having it soak in there. So that to me is still ultimately the food that that makes me really happiest
for sure
when I eat it.
All right, great answer. Can't. Then next question is the worst piece of advice you've ever received.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Again, like bad foods, I tend not to listen to bad advice. You know, like I don't even know if this is like advice, but I would say when you're young, people always tell you like, don't do this, don't do drugs, or don't whatever. It's like that's terrible advice because everyone always wants to do what they're not
allowed to do.
If I have kids and my kid's like, yo, dude, dad, I'm a smoke a J right now. I'm like, yo, dude, I'll light it up. Let's get high together.
Wow.
And I know you're going to hate it. And I think.
Let him bad trip.
No.
I love it.
No, because I think ultimately we're always told what not to do. And I don't think that teaches you anything. I think we should experience things, whether they're not ideal or ideal. Just see what's out there. And I think you can define your own limitations,
Sure.
I think alcohol is an interesting one. Like, I remember like people were like, don't drink, drinking is evil. Okay. That's ridiculous. That's extremely ridiculous.
Sound like Bobby Boucher's mama.
Dude.
Drinking is the devil.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, and I definitely enjoy alcohol. I like having drinks. But you don't know your own limitations with regards to something that's dangerous inherently and very addictive unless you experience it yourself.
Of course.
And I think you find your own limitations and you go like, okay, well, I'm gonna have mastery over this. I'm not gonna let this thing control me.
Of course.
Some people that can't be the case. They are alcoholics or they're whatever. And I think they need those guardrails. That's fine.
Definitely.
And it's not a criticism. I know a lot of people that have that. It's no worries.
But it's relative in that situation.
But yeah, I think you can't know your own sort of what you're capable of and what you should avoid unless you truly
experience it. Yeah, go through it. All right, perfect. Then last question that I want to leave off with you is your greatest accomplishment or feeling of, how do you say it, satisfaction?
I think for me, when people reach out to me, when restaurant owners, especially and chefs, when they really thank me for telling their story, for being able to shine a light on what they're doing. There's nothing better than that for me because it's a picture into somebody else's life. If somebody experiences, like I recently took photos for and helped edit a story about a Balinese pop-up, essentially.
Wow.
So this woman from Bali. I've been to Bali before, by the way.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's a complete different conversation. But
right.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I went in 2009 on my Eat, Pray, Love. I just broke up tour. And so I went to Bali and I experienced the amazing culture. And it's a beautiful place. And there was this woman who had come to LA and she had lost her restaurant job and she started cooking Balinese food in her home kitchen in Hollywood. And she was like, there's Indonesians here in LA, but there's not that many Balinese, and I wanted to make food from Bali. And so we told her story and then we wrote a story about it, and she just blew up, she got super popular. She already had a good following,
but that just took it to another level. Yeah.
So when she reached back out to me, she was like, so much, blah blah blah, we owe you. And I'm like, you don't owe me anything. I'm happy, because I went to Bali and I know how great Balinese food is. I'm so thankful that you're here cooking that food in LA, and preparing it for people. And that happens every day, all the time, and I think that's what definitely drives me, and gives me motivation every day.
No doubt.
Knowing that hardworking people, immigrants, people who are passionate about making delicious things, and spreading their culture, spreading their passion, and then providing a living for them, that is a circle that I'll never get tired of treading.
Awesome.
Because as a food person, hopefully, what inspires you isn't how well you can flex on social media, that's extremely idiotic to me, that you're just out there to post it on your gram or, become an influencer and all that crap. I think that's really stupid. But if you have the chance to go out there and make someone's life better because of the story that you tell, then yeah, man, that's amazing. And then on top of that, my next layer beyond that is always okay, when I talk to somebody about why something's delicious, why something's soulful, then I get into that's when I sort of creep in and start talking about spirituality and just who God is, because I think that's how we're in that moment. We're just so satisfied then I'm like, yeah, like that satisfaction, like that's what we want, you know. So let me tell you about that, you know. Let's talk about. Let's
elaborate on
Let's
that.
unpackage it exactly. And so yeah, so that's what really makes me happy. And yeah, man, I'm bummed. I should have made you something tasty. I'll give you some Wagyu beef.
Yo, I'm over here with some chips and some I'm just kidding. Yeah, the fact that you let us use your space and just your time, Matt. Hey, I know you have plenty of other stories and whatnot, but again, I think that like for now, thank you so much. Like again for your time. Like it was truly like a blessing, man. And I'm excited for the book. I'm excited for the little Kangs to come out ASAP. But yeah, I will have Matt's info, his social media, like all his plugs in the description. So you guys can go and check him out on there and follow him there. But yeah, thank you again, Matthew, for your time. Yeah, it was a pleasure.
I have to wash my hands now. Just kidding.
This overlay, like this, like little talk afterwards is.